Hello, friends, and welcome into Talking Sports at Work. Happy Super Bowl post-mortem day. I also saw today is also called Super Bowl hangover day. It doesn't apply to me, though, because I don't drink. And also that has a different meaning in sports, so I don't know. But I am trying new intros because I totally didn't realize that, I realized, I wasn't thinking about it. Hello, friends, is what I've been saying. It's just, I don't know, just what happened. But that's Jim Nance's thing, and I totally forgot it. I guess maybe subconsciously it had just creeped in my head somewhere, and that's probably where I got it and just didn't realize. But anyway, so I'm trying new things. So today is, happy Super Bowl post-mortem day. We'll figure out what I'm going to do from there. But what a game, man. I mean, that was overtime in the Super Bowl. You know, totally a defensive battle in the first half, and then the offenses start to get rolling a little in the second half. The 49ers have the Chiefs down by 10 again, just like they did a few years ago, and the Chiefs come back to win it. And Usher at halftime, and evidently also that was Jermaine Dupri. For those of you who didn't know, I didn't realize that's who it was. And I was very happy because I was listening to ESPN radio this morning, and that's how I actually found out who it was. And Evan Cohen thought the exact same thing I did. I even said, is that CeeLo Green? I didn't realize who that's what, but evidently Evan Cohen also thought the exact same thing, thought it was CeeLo Green. It just, from that outfit and the bald head, it just looked, that's what it looked like. And I haven't seen Jermaine Dupri in 20 years probably, on anything. It's like, I don't know what happened to him, but well, there he was at the Super Bowl. And Alicia Keys was there. God, I love her. I've always had a thing for her, and that was really cool to see. I don't know I haven't heard the reviews of the Super Bowl show yet, halftime show, except for, brief mentions on there. I thought it was okay. It wasn't like, jumped out as one of the best ever, but I also had the kids still being crazy and running around and dancing. I actually did a video of them dancing at one point. It was really cute. So yeah, I couldn't even really hear the whole thing that well anyway. Nothing in my mind will live up to the one they did in LA a few years ago when it was, Dr. Dre and Eminem and Snoop Dogg, and that was just that was so cool, man. I don't know if any of them will live up to that. I mean, eventually they'll probably do one that does, but yeah. Anyway, Usher was cool. Seeing Alicia Keys is always nice. If I would have known that was Jermaine Dupri, that probably would have been pretty cool. But yeah, and we had a fun night. We had my little mini Super Bowl party. We just kind of threw together at the last minute. If I would have thought, I don't know why it never occurred to me. And I always end up thinking about this kind of stuff last minute and never planning ahead. But I'm going to try to maybe start doing this every year and just have like a little Super Bowl party, because it turned out a lot of fun. It was really just my family. It was my mom and Mimi and Lydia's mom, Ruthie, the kids, Nana, and Jack's friend, Memphis, and his dad, and Julian was there, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't like a big crowd, but, and obviously, with me being sober, it's not going to be rock, and having 3 kids at home, it's not going to be like a raucous, drinking Super Bowl party, but it was really a lot of fun. We had the game going in the living room and in the kitchen, and then downstairs the playroom, and I also had Madden set up for the kids because Jack's always playing that anyway, and they all got to play that together for a little while. It was a really good time. It was. And the Chiefs, now repeat champions. I won some money on that one, and for those of you who listened to watched the last episode, it was a Super Bowl betting guide, bonus edition, whatever. Hopefully you got something out of it. Most of what I said, I guess it ended up being about half and half, were correct. In the first half, I spent a lot of time thinking about, man, I'm going to have to apologize for that. I hope nobody took my advice because it did not look good. I think Kelce had one catch in the first half. The Chiefs offense could do absolutely nothing. Pacheco, they couldn't get the run game going. The turnovers were hurting them. But they also, benefited from a turnover there. But, it just did not look like this is going to be a good night for the Chiefs. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I was betting on it, because I get the whole Chiefs fatigue thing. I really do. I understand how people are now getting sick of seeing the same team win. I can definitely empathize with that. Now they're even more of a celebrity team with, they were already superstars with Mahomes, being all that he is, and Kelce being a star, and now Taylor Swift, who's maybe the biggest star in the world, is affiliated. And, so I get everybody kind of being sick of them. And honestly, even though I like them, I do like the Chiefs, I like Andy Reid, and I don't see them as really being able to play that villain role like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, who just kind of fit that role better. Even though I do like them, I probably would have been rooting for the 49ers had I not been betting on the game, just because, it would have been nice. I like Kyle Shanahan, and I like the 49ers too, and it would have been cool to see Brock Purdy, silence all the haters, and that would have been cool to see. But because I had money on it, and again, I do like the Chiefs. They're not my team, obviously, but, I was pulling for them, and it did not look like it was going to work out well in the first half. And I seriously was. I was thinking, man, I'm going to have to do a podcast tomorrow and get on there and apologize to anyone who may have taken my advice. But if you took my advice on most of that, then you at least won a little bit. I think I did pretty much all of the bets that I said on the thing. For instance, there was, the Chiefs, just on the money line, you would have won that. The Chiefs, and I said Kelce over 60 yards. He got well over that. He ended up with 90 something, I think. The two of them that didn't hit were the first touchdown scorer, because I said, in any Chiefs game, it's good to take a chance on Kelce or Pacheco. Neither of those hit. Christian McCaffrey was the first touchdown scorer. My mom actually put a little bit of money on that, and so she won that. That was cool. And then another one that I was really, really surprised didn't hit was each team scoring at least 6.5 in both halves. So I really just thought, that one's, I was as confident in that as I was in any other bet, honestly, that I placed. I did not think that there's any way that either of those teams are only going to score under 6 points in both halves. But yeah, sure enough, the Chiefs were held to, I think, 3 maybe in the first half. I can't remember exactly, but I know that they didn't end up getting it. And then, the Chiefs money line was the other one. And also I had a parlay with the Chiefs money line and Kelce over 60 yards. So I did end up winning a little bit. And I also doubled down on the Chiefs at halftime because the odds were, they were even bigger underdogs. Going into the game, it was, right about even if you took the Chiefs money line. But then at halftime, it was plus 170 because, you saw the way the game was going. And I just knew that Mahomes is going to, this offense is going to get rolling in the second half. I wasn't saying I'm sure that they're going to win, but at plus 170 with this team, this quarterback, and the history there, I just feel like, I'm going to so I doubled down on the Chiefs at halftime, and, very glad that I did. So, hope that you took some of my advice. And if you did, even if you took all of my advice, then you probably won at least a little bit. I'm not even going to do the TMI thing this morning because we'll just count that. You guys got to hear about my party. Many of you probably were at the party, those of you listening now. I mean, again, it wasn't like a party. It was just my family and then Jack's friend. So, but it was a lot of fun. And I think I am in the future going to start trying to do an actual party and like prepare and plan it ahead of time and invite more people. And that's something else. And this guy, I guess, could be a little TMI thing. That's something else that I've realized lately. I've never really I've never, as far as I know, really felt lonely at much. Because for my whole life, well, first of all, I'm always much more comfortable by myself than the vast majority of people. I like being on my own a lot of the time. And plus, for most of my life, I've always had a girlfriend, or, when I was being a screw up, I was, living with my Mimi and Papa, or with my mom, or, so there's always been somebody around, or I've usually had a girlfriend for most of my life. This is the longest I think I've ever been just straight single. It's been over a year now. But, and I've always also been okay by myself. And so lately, the kids have been going to Lydia's pretty regularly lately. And they actually spent 4 nights there last week, which, doesn't happen often. But, every week they spend at least a couple nights with her. Well, most weeks anyway. And so over the last few weeks, it's occurred to me, I've just gotten really, really depressed at times. And I've known that, part of it is because I miss the kids, but I realized I think I'm just lonely. And that's not an emotion that I'm used to experiencing. I didn't even recognize it until a couple of days ago. It occurred to me what that probably is. So I am now making an effort to be more sociable. I'm going to invite people over more frequently. I'm going to try to reach out and talk to my friends more, and maybe go out and hang out with friends more. Because I recognize that, this is what loneliness feels like, and it sucks. And when the kids are around, I'm fine. I don't care. But on the nights when they stay with Lydia, it really does kind of hit me. And that's surprising to me because, again, I've always enjoyed being by myself. But, so anyway, that can be my little TMI segment for today. We've got a lot to dive into. It's, spoiler alert, all going to be about the Super Bowl. But, man, a lot to talk about. The game, Brock Purdy has a pretty good game. Patrick Mahomes plays Superman at the end. The game goes to overtime. We get the first overtime game with these new rules, and that in itself is going to be a topic. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back. Alrighty, hey friends, back again. So, man, that was an awesome game last night, and everybody for the most part had left by halftime. Some people stayed to watch the halftime show, but then after that, everybody pretty much left because it was already getting late, and at that point, it was already what normally would have been the kids' bedtime. So I let them stay up for a while longer. They stayed up till towards the end of the fourth quarter, actually. And then Jack, being Jack, he stayed awake and kept kind of sneaking out into the hallway to try to watch, and saw it go into overtime. So I finally told him, just come on down, and he stayed up with me and finished watching the rest of it because that boy loves football. He is so much like me. But yeah, and so we got to watch the end of that together, and it was really cool to see. So one thing too, one of the things that jumped out to me about that game, and it's interesting because as soon as I turned on the radio this morning and started listening to, I think it was Mad Dog. It was the first thing I heard them talk about, and then on ESPN a little bit later, I heard them talking about it again, like one of the top. So I guess it is one of the main topics of the day. It's something that struck me as being kind of odd and interesting. And that was, this dickhead is just going to go fast enough where I can't get past him. Anyway, I hate people. Why? What difference does it make if you stay in front of me? Why are you going to go just fast enough to where I can't get past you? And then once it's 2 lanes again and I can't pass you anymore, you slow the hell down. Why? Anyway, so what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So overtime. This is the first time that we've seen, first game that we've had with these new rules, and I think that this should be the rules, not just in the playoffs. I like this. I think they should make it this way in all games, regular season as well. And I get that, they're already, they've added another game. There's 17 games now. Guys get hurt. It's a physical game. They get tired. You don't want to make these games much longer. But if you do want the games to be even and fair, and this is the better system, to just not let it be decided by the coin flip, where even if the first team scores a touchdown, the other team still gets an opportunity. Um, and and so yeah, I really like it. And I said, um, before the coin flip, I even texted my cousin and my mom about it and said, wouldn't it be better to kick in this situation? And so that's kind of what I assumed would happen. Whoever won the toss, I thought that they would kick. Um, because it's just like college, or well, it's not just like it. It's not the same, not the same system, but it's a similar scenario where if both teams, are going to get a chance to possess the ball, then wouldn't you want to start off on defense and let the other team go first and see now what you have to match? And I get it, and I've heard some of the talk about it afterwards, and they even talked about it on the broadcast briefly. Because I saw the 49ers won the toss, and I was like, man, they're probably going to kick. And he said, no, they want to receive. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's just what they're used to doing in that situation, or if this is a calculated, we know what we're doing. And I heard one thing, it might have been Tony Romo or, on the broadcast, they said that, your defense is tired. They've just been out there for that long drive. They've been out there for this full game. Maybe you want to give them a rest. And I don't get that logic. I mean, if the better thing strategically to do is to kick the ball, which it is, that is the better decision in this situation, just like it is in college. The better decision there is to kick the ball. Then, I mean, you got to put your defense back out there. I mean, first of all, it's Mahomes. He's going to move the ball and get some first downs anyway. But this is the Super Bowl. I get it. Your guys are exhausted. You're going to have to rotate bodies or something. If it's the better decision to make, you make that decision. So I don't know. And then I heard on the radio when they were talking about it, evidently Kyle Shanahan had said something about the analytics element of it to where the third possession would have been important, or I don't know. I didn't hear what he said, but apparently he was focused on, them matching each other and then the third possession. So I don't know. I don't know why that would be the thinking. That doesn't make any sense because there's definitely not a third possession guaranteed. But that was apparently what he said. I should look that up and actually hear what he had to say. And another thing, too, and this is something just on a side note, because I heard them talking, a caller on the radio this morning was saying that something about if the Niners would have scored, and then if Kansas City would have, if they would have scored a touchdown, then Kansas City would have gone down and scored a touchdown. He thinks that Andy Reid would have gone for two there. And then with them talking about that and the whole whatever it was that Shanahan mentioned about analytics, that got them into the analytics discussion. And one thing that I want to bring up, because people have this concept that analytics always is about being uber, super ridiculously aggressive. It's not. Analytics does not always tell you to go for it on every fourth down. It's not going to tell you to go for two after every touchdown. People have this thinking in their head that analytics is all about this super aggression. It's really not. It's just about statistically and based on almost innumerable number of factors. Well, not, but a shitload of factors, what is most likely going to help you to win the game. And a lot of the time that is being more aggressive than coaches traditionally used to be. But it's not always. That's not always the case. A lot of the times, analytics will tell you to kick a field goal on fourth down or tell you to punt on a fourth down. It's not always going to be about this uber aggressive. It's not always, going for it and going for two. And, that's not the case. And anyway, that's going to get me into a whole other discussion that maybe we'll save that for another day. But yeah, so my thinking was whenever they won the toss and then said receive, I was thrilled because but I was like, maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. But no, it feels to me like the better decision is just like in college, let the other team's offense get out there first, see what they do, and then know what you have to do. And if they had done that, then they would have known they have to go for it there on fourth down, and they wouldn't have settled for that field goal. So to me, it was the wrong decision. I don't know that you can say that's what cost them the Super Bowl. There were lots of things. They got away from the running game in the third quarter for some reason. Turnovers hurt them, but turnovers also hurt the Chiefs as well. I think they both had 2 turnovers. And from what I have listened to this morning so far, it seems like the bulk of the blame for everything is going on Kyle Shanahan, and that this is, again, he's lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl for the second time after having a double-digit lead. He's also, everybody remembers, was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they blew that 28-3 lead against the Patriots years ago. And that kind of stuff, after, having now 3 things like that, that's going to stick on a guy's reputation. Everybody knows he's now one of the best head coaches in all of football, but that kind of stuff's hard to shake off. I'm going to take another quick break, and then we will dive into that a little bit further because there's some more I want to talk about with that. Howdy, friends. We are back. So, talking more about what happened last night. And anytime there's something like this, everybody wants to start picking things apart. There's always the conversation about, is it more about the team who won, or is it about the team who lost blowing it? In this case, it's definitely about the Chiefs for me, but it seems like most people in the media, from what I've heard so far this morning, have the opposite opinion. And again, that's because we've now seen Kyle Shanahan as a head coach lose twice in the Super Bowl after having double-digit leads in the second half. We saw him lose in the Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator after having that 28-3 lead. So, I get that this is starting to look like a little bit of a trend. And one thing that I heard was that, I don't remember, I think it was on Mad Dog. It was Darren, whatever his name is, DA, talking about he doesn't think he can come back from this. And he said, how many coaches out there do you see? How many times do we see a guy lose his first 2 Super Bowls and then ever come back to win one? And I mean, that for one, and there are 2 points actually that I want to make about that. Number one, yeah, that has happened before. Don Shula is one of the guys, and he actually brought it up after he thought about it. He said, Don Shula, I guess, did lose 2 and then come back and win 1. Also, the Broncos, even though they didn't have the same coach the entire time, John Elway as a quarterback had lost at least 2. I think he lost 2. Yeah, I think it was only 2, but he lost twice, and then years later came back and won 2. So I think, I don't see that as being a thing. The second point I want to make is how many coaches out there make it to 2 Super Bowls? You can say, how many coaches lose their first 2 Super Bowls and never come back to win one? How many coaches out there actually even make one? Not many. Most of them don't. So I think it's still an accomplishment, and you still have to recognize him as being a really good coach. Just the fact that he's made 2 Super Bowls now, I think that is worth noting. Now, is it, is that going to put him in the Hall of Fame? No. Is that going to put him, as talked about as one of the best coaches ever, or even the best coach in the league? No. But it's an accomplishment in itself. And I think just saying, writing him off as a failure and saying he can't come back from this because he's made it to 2 Super Bowls and lost, I think that's sort of the wrong perspective. And I also think, and this is something that I have been saying for a while now, and I talked about it a few weeks ago with the Bills. Everybody was talking about what's wrong with the Bills. Why can't they get over this hump? Why, is it Josh Allen? Is it the receivers? Is it Sean McDermott? What is wrong with the Bills? Why can't they get past this? And I've said, there's nothing really wrong with the Bills. The problem is the Chiefs. It's the problem everybody in the NFL has. It's not just the Bills. It's not just the Ravens. It's not just the 49ers. It's the entire NFL. The problem is the Chiefs. So you can't just keep looking at these teams and dissecting them and picking them apart and saying, this is what's wrong with them. That's what they need to change. That's what they need to fix. The problem is the Chiefs. And I'm not saying that everybody should just give up and give them the trophy at the beginning of the season, but I think it's the wrong, perspective to take to say that these teams are all just failures because they can't get past the Chiefs every time. Now, will they be considered a failure if the Bills never beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. Same with the Ravens. If the 49ers never win a Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan, yes, they will be considered failures. I mean, in the overall grand scheme of things. But the problem is there's a new dynasty in town. It's the same thing with Peyton Manning, and he couldn't get past. That was at the height or in the middle of the Brady Patriots dynasty, and the Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger were rolling, and for years, I think it was like 8 or 9 years until Peyton finally won a Super Bowl. So the problem is not that these teams have all these issues and that Kyle Shanahan's a bad play caller and that Sean McDermott's a bad coach and that Josh Allen, you can't win with Josh Allen and Lamar chokes in the playoffs. All of those things, to some degree, are have truth to them, we'll say. Like, those are things that are problems. But the biggest problem is not even with these teams. It's the Chiefs, man. It's that this dude, Patrick Mahomes, is now, in my opinion, the best to ever play the position. He just is. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. Even when Brady was, who is now the standard, obviously, Tom Brady, and I'm not saying that Patrick now eclipses him in terms of overall greatness, but he's accomplished more than Brady did in his first, at this point in his career. And Brady never did the kind of things that Mahomes did. He never took off running for 20 yards and a big first down to keep a game going. You couldn't do that read option with him where Kelsey was leading the way on 4th and 1. You couldn't do that with Brady. Brady couldn't run around for 30 seconds almost, it feels like, making defenders miss and then throw it 50 yards down the field. This dude is unlike anything we've ever seen. He's like some insane combination of Brett Favre and John Elway and Tom Brady. It's nuts. I mean, and I know everybody's sick of him, but you have to acknowledge this. We've never seen anything like this. This dude is just beyond. I mean, he's better than Montana. He's better than Favre. He's better than Manning and Breeze, and he's better than Brady ever was. He's not greater, and I don't know that he's going to win more than 6 Super Bowls. And if we're ever going to say that he's greater than, then, that would, I guess, have to be the standard. He's going to have to win at least 1 or 2 more to be, talked about like that. But he's better than any of those ever were. He's the best quarterback, the most talented. He's better than Aaron Rodgers. He is like a souped-up version of, if you took Aaron Rodgers and then on Madden just maxed out his throwing power and deep accuracy and awareness, that's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's crazy. And I get it. Again, I get that everybody's sick. Sick of them. We all know now how great they are. We all know that he is just ridiculously special. Everybody loves him. Everybody's sick of him. Travis Kelce's, a bit, doing Saturday Night Live and has Taylor Swift there with Blake Lively. I think that's Blake Lively. I keep seeing with her. So I get it. But at the same time, man, you've got to recognize it. And I am going to keep rooting for them as long as they keep being underdogs in the playoffs because I'm going to keep putting money on them. I mean, and it's not just that. Like I said, I like Andy Reid. I've liked Patrick Mahomes all along, too. Actually, that first year, that he was going to be the starter. I drafted him in one of the middle late rounds on my fantasy team because I said, there must be something special about this dude if Andy Reid and the Chiefs are willing to trade up to get him and then, send Alex Smith, who was still playing well, to trade him away to let this guy step in. There must be something special to him. So I've been a Mahomes fan all along. Actually, I think it was after that first year. My then wife and I at the time, we did that for Halloween. I dressed up as Andy Reid and she was Patrick Mahomes. It was either after his first year, that MVP year, or the second year when they won the Super Bowl. So, I've always loved Andy Reid, like I said. So I do have an affection for them. But if I hadn't been betting money on them, I probably would have been rooting for the 49ers just to see somebody else win. And because, I like Shanahan and I like the 49ers as well. So I got way off topic there. I don't even remember what it was. Oh yeah, Shanahan. Um, Look, was the play calling great? No. It was pretty good until the third quarter when they went 3-and-out 3 times in a row and got away from the run game. That's really, in my opinion, what lost them the game. Now, so can you say that it's Shanahan's fault? Yeah, to some degree you can. But they weren't blocking well enough. Purdy was not, the receivers didn't seem to be getting open or running the right routes. Now, I don't know, that could be the play calling too. But when you know what you've got coming with Steve Spagnuolo, which you do, and he showed it to you the entire game, didn't really adjust that much, didn't have to. It's going to be pressure, especially on third down. He's going to bring extra guys. It just didn't seem like they ever made the right adjustments for that. And they should have been prepared for it going in. Everybody knows that's what you're going to get with the Chiefs. So, I don't know. Now, Brock Purdy is another topic that I'm going to get into in just a few minutes as well, because I do want to talk a little bit about him. He's obviously been a big topic. But look, I still think Kyle Shanahan is one of the best coaches in the league. There's a reason that the 49ers are now the standard that everyone is trying to copy in terms of coaching, offensive philosophy, and front office stuff. That there's a reason. It's because they are the standard. The pairing of him and John Lynch with what they've done with that organization, that's what everybody wants to be like. And there's a reason. The Titans, we are now trying to emulate that basically with Brian Callahan, who sort of comes from that same system. He comes from the McVay system, who is, pretty much it's all the same. They were all together. They were all, Mike Shanahan assistants, and Kyle's obviously a son, and it's the same sort of West Coast zone run stuff with a lot of pre-snap motion and all that. And Rand Carthon, who is our GM, obviously comes directly from the 49ers front office. So, yeah, but is it his fault? I mean, honestly, it's hard to look at the way that game went and also know the history that he lost a double-digit lead against them a few years ago as well, and the way that the play calling just seemed to get off course in the third quarter. Now, they got back to it in the fourth, and you saw McCaffrey was popping it for 6, 7, 8 yards, it seemed like, almost every carry. Now, they did stop him for a short game, but on first down, in the fourth quarter, they ended up with 2nd and 4. Whereas in the third quarter, they were looking at 2nd and 10 every time, it felt like. But they got back to it in the fourth quarter, and maybe it was a little too late. And then the call in overtime to receive the ball instead of kicking, that was the wrong decision. And honestly, they should have lost the game even sooner than they did. But Trent McDuffie, who had played a fabulous friggin' game before that, had that defensive holding on 3rd and 13, I think it was, and they stopped them. But then there was that defensive holding call that gave them a first down. That was on their first series of overtime. They almost didn't even get a first down there. But then that defensive holding allowed the drive to continue, and then they started marching and got all the way down and kicked the field goal to, go ahead by 3. But, they should have put the Chiefs offense out there first. I mean, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear the explanation, but yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I see how you could put it on Kyle Shanahan. I really do. And if that's the perspective that you want to take, then I think that's who you've got to look at. But I'm just more along the lines of this is the dynasty of the NFL right now. And so I don't want to be too hard on anyone for losing to them. And again, I'm not saying that everybody else should just give up. You do need to fix these things. You do need to make adjustments. Kyle Shanahan does need to learn from these mistakes and these bad decisions in these biggest of games. Josh Allen and the Bills do need to improve. They do need to add to that receiving core and improve the defense. The Ravens do need to their play calling was bad in the second half against the Chiefs. They do need to fix that. They do need to improve. But at the same time, to me, it's more about the team who's winning these games than it is about how the other teams lost it. That's just the way I look at it. It just feels like everybody wants to attack and go after. This is the problem. They're not going to be able to win with this guy and blah blah blah. To me, it's just, what are you going to do against this level of greatness? I mean, how much can really be expected? It's just yeah, that's the way it is. And maybe I would be feeling differently. What the hell? Sorry, my vape thing just for the second time today has started leaking all over the place. I'm gonna have to pull over. Anyway, but yeah, and again, I'm not saying that these teams should just, not that, should just be okay with second place or anything like that. But I'm saying, as far as the media goes, everybody's always taking these perspectives of you can't win with Lamar in the playoffs, you can't win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen, Kyle Shanahan can't win a Super Bowl. That's none of those things are true. The problem is they keep all running up against this ridiculous level of greatness that is Patrick Mahomes. And by the way, the best defense he's ever had in his career is what they have this year. That was what won them this game. It was Patrick Mahomes putting on his cape and putting them on his shoulders there at late in the fourth quarter and in overtime. But what kept them in this game through the entirety of it was Steve Spagnuolo's defense. And if they can keep playing to that level, I don't know what you're going to be able to do about the Chiefs anytime real soon. But I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'll be right back. All right. Hey again, friends. So, only a couple more things that I really wanted to touch on about the game. First of all, I've got to give some love to the Vols who played in this one, because two of them played outstanding games. In fact, I think Jauan Jennings was maybe on his way to a Super Bowl MVP if they had won. Now, it probably would have ended up being McCaffrey, because he really kind of took over there in the fourth quarter and became unstoppable. I think he ended up having 160 total yards. I think he had 80 rushing and 80 receiving. So it probably would have, and he had the touchdown as well that Jauan Jennings threw him. It probably would have been him, but it would have been close, I think, between him and Jauan Jennings, because Jauan Jennings threw a touchdown. I think he was either first or second in terms of receptions and receiving yards on the team. I mean, he was incredible in this game. He was also blocking like a friggin' tight end out there. And it was really cool to hear as well. I couldn't hear most of the game because the kids were being so loud and everybody was talking and stuff. But one thing that I did get to hear and kind of told everybody to be quiet for a second was Jim Nantz mentioned, when Jauan Jennings threw that touchdown, he mentioned the Hail Mary against Georgia years ago, whenever Dobbs threw it to Jennings and Jennings caught it, jumped up and caught it. And that was the game where there were back-to-back Hail Marys. We thought we had the game sealed and won, and then Georgia throws a Hail Mary and goes ahead, and then we, in the next drive, answer right back with the Hail Mary of our own and retake the lead and win the game. And it was cool to hear Jim Nantz mention that game in the Super Bowl after Jennings threw that touchdown. And I don't know if he may have been the one who called that game. I don't remember, but Yeah, I think that's what I thought was maybe he was the one who called it. Maybe that's why he's remembering it and mentioning it. But yeah, that was really cool to hear. Also, Trey Smith, who's become one of the best guards in the league, and you knew all along had the potential to be an all pro player. You know, he was the number one overall recruit in the country when we got him years ago. The only reason he fell as far as he did in the draft was because he had those blood clot issues. He had the blood clots in his lungs, which were really, really scary, you know, and life threatening. But he's been completely healthy. He's had no issues since he's been in the NFL. He's been their starting right guard since day one. He's been an all pro caliber player, and he was blocking great in this one. They didn't run the ball well. But I think that was mostly because of San Francisco. Pacheco also, he didn't have a great game. I mean, that fumble. I was afraid that that's going to end up really, really costing them. And it did, and it could have, because the biggest play of the game, as far as yardage, and maybe this was probably their biggest pass play of the playoffs this year, was that deep throw to Mecole Hardman that was 50-plus yards. And that set them up, and you think, okay, now the Chiefs are getting going, and they're about to score, and then the very next play, Pacheco fumbles it. And that was also the time when Kelce had his little incident with Andy Reid, which I didn't even see at the time. I must have been up doing something else. I didn't even know about this until this morning when I heard it being talked about. But everybody's talking about how Kelce pushed Andy Reid and blah, blah, blah. And so I actually looked it up when I got a minute. And first of all, he didn't push him. I mean, it was totally unnecessary. He shouldn't have been doing that. But he didn't push him. He was kind of trying to get in his face and get his attention, and he bumped him, and it just kind of knocked Andy Reid off balance. And I get it. You can't do that. That's totally unacceptable, but it does feel like some of the people on the radio were kind of making too big of a deal out of it. I mean, first of all, it's not like he did that to Mike McDaniel. Andy Reid's a former offensive lineman. He's a big dude. And so, Kelce getting up and kind of bumping him, and, unintentionally when he's talking to him, is not the end of the world. He should, again, unacceptable, totally. And he should apologize for it. But it's not a huge deal. Now, if he had done that to Mike McDaniel or Sean McVay, then, maybe that could have been a bigger problem. But yeah. And they were also talking about how the CBS crew maybe kind of didn't point it out enough and gave him a pass because everybody loves Kelce, and maybe that wasn't fair. And I get that. But yeah, I didn't think it was a huge deal, but yeah, it was totally unacceptable. But yeah, I wanted to give some love to Jauan Jennings and Trey Smith. Both guys had huge, especially Jennings had a huge game. Trey Smith is one of the best guards in football and had a good game for now the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. I'm going to take another quick break here, get some gas, clean up this friggin' mess from my vape thing, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, hey friends, back again. So got some gas, got my mess cleaned up, got back in order, did some stretching. My back's been hurting again lately for some reason, which that just sucks. But anyway, it's not that bad. So almost got everything covered that I wanted to talk about today, and that works out well because it's almost we're almost out of time. There were two other things really that I wanted to discuss, and one of them was Brock Purdy, because one thing that I was thinking and saying after that first half was, at least after this, it should kind of quiet everybody and remove any doubt about Brock Purdy, because in that first half, he played a really good game. He wasn't great, but he was good. And then then the second half started, and the play calling hurt him. It did. It could have been better. They got away from the run. Steve Spagnuolo's excellent defense. I think the number 2 ranked defense in football this year gave him trouble, but he wasn't quite as good. He wasn't really as good as I was hoping he would be. And I'm not really a Purdy defender, but I'm also not a Purdy hater. My opinion on him has been he's good. He's good enough to where I don't think there should be any doubt he is their starting quarterback. He's the kind of guy who can make a couple Pro Bowls, who you can win with a good team around him, and can get you a Super Bowl, I think. But he's not going to be Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow. He's not going to be a guy who's just a superhero and can put the team on his back. I don't think he's going to be winning any MVPs, but he's good enough. Like, I think he's like a Kirk Cousins type. Like, you can win with this dude. And one thing that everybody needs to remember: this is just his second year. This is his first full year as the starter, so he's still getting better. And so I think in the end he ended up playing about a B game. It looked like it was going to be maybe an A minus there in the first half, but overall I think he played about a B level. The run game is what really got them going in the second half, and they should have really gotten back to it earlier. But he was good enough to where he's definitely not the reason they lost. Nobody can say that. But he also wasn't really able to put them on his back and, lead them down like at the end, that final drive in overtime. He wasn't able to, get first downs and keep get them in the end zone when they crossed the 50 and ended up settling for those field goals. So it felt like he could have been better. That wasn't the best game we've seen from him, but he also wasn't the reason why they lost. So really, in the end, it's probably just going to continue to be the same debate. And that's what it sounded like. Whenever I was listening to the radio this morning, when they did talk about Brock Purdy, it sounded like the exact same discussion that everyone has been having about him for the last few months. One guy's saying he's a game manager, and the other one saying, well, I think he's somewhere in between, the Cam Newton scale of game manager or game changer. I think he's kind of in the middle. And, so it's, everybody has these very strong opinions about Brock Purdy. And I was really thinking in that first half, I think that all that shit's going to quiet down and mostly go away if he can continue to play like this and they can beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That didn't end up happening. He didn't play really well in the second half. He wasn't terrible, but yeah. So that's the way it went. I think he's still getting better. I think he's already at least a top half of the league's quarterbacks, so he's at least top 15. He's probably top 10 and maybe, but he is a guy that fits well with what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. He's accurate and makes good decisions. And, really there were times when, like, that one play sticks out to me. It's when they could have had a touchdown. I think it was in the second quarter, and they were down inside the red zone, and it was third down, and Debo got past his guy and was wide open in the end zone, but Purdy didn't have the time to see it and make an accurate throw because Chris Jones did what he does and disrupted it, and, it ended up being incomplete. And those are the kind of things is that on Purdy for not still making an accurate throw with Chris Jones bearing down on him? Or do we give more of the credit to the Chiefs defense, specifically Chris Jones, for blowing that play up? And you can look at it either way. Could he have made a more accurate throw? Probably, but you shouldn't expect that from him in that situation, I don't think. But yeah, I mean, it's that kind of stuff. So, the last thing, and actually I feel like this should be its own little segment. I've got enough time to do one more quick segment. So I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be right back. All right, friends. Hey, we've got a few more minutes, and this is going to be probably the last full segment. I might think of something else that I want to talk about in the evening segment, but this was pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. So I think this will probably be the penultimate segment, and maybe I'll just come back in the evening and close things out. But one thing that I did want to discuss was, and you guys know that I love Andy Reid. I probably should quit saying that because by now, if you've listened to the show, he's always been my favorite non-Titans coach. But I think that we as fans and people in the media might need to change the way we judge coaches, because at least the best coaches, because here's the thing. I think everybody, for the most part, if you poll uh, experts and knowledgeable fans, the vast majority of them would say that Andy Reid is now the best coach in the NFL. For about 20 years prior to these last few years, the same amount of people, if not more, would have said Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in the NFL, maybe the greatest coach of all time. And I think now Andy Reid is putting himself up there in that conversation as one of the best coaches of all time. What do those two guys have in common, though, when you look at their stretches of greatness and their stretches of being the best coach in football? They have two of, if not the two greatest quarterbacks of all time. So how much, so the question is, in my mind, how much credit is really due to the coaches, or how much is due to the quarterback? Now, they're not completely separate. The coach has a lot to do with developing and helping the quarterback, especially in the case of Andy Reid, who worked with Mahomes and helped him to reach his potential. But I just think it's interesting that, for years, Bill Belichick was almost undisputedly the best coach in the NFL. And what did he have during that time? The greatest quarterback to ever play the game. And now it has shifted over the last few years, and especially this year with no more Belichick in the NFL now, to, excuse me, Andy Reid is now the best coach in the NFL. And it just strikes me as being very interesting that both of these guys, during their stretches of being the best quarterback in the NFL, have these two, multiple MVP, multiple Super Bowls, beyond, for if there's a thing more than first ballot Hall of Famers, they would be it. And so it just makes me wonder if we're looking at this wrong. And how much credit do these guys really deserve when they have these two friggin' superheroes at the most important position in the sport? So I just wonder if maybe we should be analyzing and judging the greatness of coaches a little bit differently. I mean, has Kyle Shanahan maybe done more with less? I don't know. Maybe that's probably not a good example. But Sean McVay maybe did. Getting to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. And I don't know. I'm not saying that I think it's wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm disputing the greatness of Bill Belichick or Andy Reid. I love Andy Reid. I think he's one of the all-time greats. Bill Belichick is undisputedly one of the all-time greats. But it just strikes me as being interesting that these guys are, looked at as the greatest of their, time period, or at least kind of they're really, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Contemporaries. But, when Belichick lost Brady, he stopped being the best coach in the NFL. And Andy Reid was never considered the best coach in the NFL. He was considered a really good one, but he was never even talked about as the best, or maybe even one of the best, until he got Patrick Mahomes. So, but again, you can't look at those two things completely separately either, excuse me, because the coach does have a lot to do with the success of the quarterback. So I don't know. I think that's worth looking at, though, in terms of how we judge coaches and how much credit we give them. Is it proportional? I don't know. Anyway, I got to get to work. Like I said, that was really most of what I wanted to cover. There were a couple other just little things that maybe I'll touch on in the evening segment, but I want to thank everyone for listening to Talking Sports at Work, this Super Bowl postmortem edition. I will do my job, get to work, and I will talk to you guys this evening. I'll be back in what for me will be several hours and what for you will be several seconds. Okay, bye. All right. Hey, friends, back again. It is evening time, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Monday. I am headed back to town now, and yeah, I honestly, there's not much more to talk about. As I think I mentioned at the end of the morning segment, I think I really covered just about everything that I was going to say this morning. I mean, there are a handful of smaller topics, but I mean, the truth is, maybe I'll save those. I don't know. And the question that I'm sure all of you are wondering is, with the NFL season now officially over, college football's long gone, where does the podcast go from here? And to tell you the truth, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But, really, I kind of knew that this thing was going to sort of just, or I hoped that it was just sort of, organically evolve and develop as I went along. And it kind of has. I also always knew that I kind of wanted to move, not necessarily totally move over to doing the YouTube and the video episodes, but do those a lot more, because honestly, I just feel like those are the things that more people seem to be interested in, for one. Excuse me, but also, it just seems like that's a better way for this to grow. Now, I'm not saying, again, that I'm going to stop doing this. I plan to continue doing the podcast, just in the traditional audio format. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's still going to be plenty to talk about. There's still be plenty of off-season stuff to talk about, as well as basketball season, now fully heated up and underway. Well, it's been underway, but this is the time of year when I finally start paying attention to basketball a little more. I'm actually more interested in college basketball this year than I have been in a while, because the Vols are so good. They were already a Final Four caliber team last year, before Zakai Ziegler got hurt, and now pretty much that entire team came back, and you add maybe the best player in the country in Dalton Knecht, as well as Gainey, who's been a great addition. But they just keep losing these games that they shouldn't lose. It's really weird. We've now got 6 losses. 3 of them are against 3 of the top 7 teams in the country. It was against Kansas, Purdue, and North Carolina. All 3 of those teams are somewhere in the top 7. And then the other 3 losses are to unranked teams that we should have just handled. So it's really hard to know what to expect from the basketball team this year. I keep feeling like they're going to get it figured out and, really start to roll, but I don't know. I mean, hopefully that's still going to be the case. If it was just 1 loss to a Texas A&M or South Carolina or something, then I can understand it. But, having the same sort of thing happen now 3 times sucks. But yeah, so we'll have a lot of college basketball to talk about. We'll have some NBA stuff to talk about. I'll start paying attention to that. And plus, a lot of this is just my own personal opinions about other, stuff outside of sports as well. So yeah, I imagine there's going to still be plenty going on, plenty to discuss, plenty for me to get off my chest. And, something weird that I realized too is that, and I think I talked in the morning segment about how I'm going to try to start just being more sociable and doing more things with grown-ups, doing stuff with people who aren't my kids all the time. And something that occurred to me, and this is so stupid because it seems like, it's such an obvious thing, is that I've realized some pretty important things about myself by talking about them to other people. And that may be the most obvious statement ever, but to me it wasn't. Like, I always thought that I was pretty good at sort of figuring things out on my own. And there aren't really that many people whose advice I trust, and so there aren't, I don't usually seek out other people's advice or opinions on big things, but, especially actually twice over the last month or so, when I've been, well, more than a month, but a couple of times lately, I've realized things about myself when I've actually been sharing about it in my little AA meetings that I go to, that I attend every day on Zoom. And, I've kind of come to, had some big realizations. One was the thing that I shared earlier this morning about how, it just occurred to me that this must be loneliness. This is, I think, what's going on with me. And then the other was something more about my alcoholism and addiction stuff that I'll save for another day, I guess. It's not a big deal, but it was basically just I realized that, after I hadn't been going to meetings for a while, that I was probably pretty close to the edge of losing my sobriety whenever I started going back to meetings again a few months ago. But yeah, anyway, I'm kind of just rambling now and off topic, but yeah, we'll still have plenty to discuss. And, the other thing is that it feels like the YouTube channel and the video episodes are now, they're more entertaining whenever the kids are in it, and they're more fun, honestly. I feel a little hypocritical about that because I didn't want to be someone who, I feel like a lot of these people who make these videos with their kids, like, the Ninja Kids and the Kid City, and I don't know if you're parents, you probably are familiar with some of the stuff. If not, you probably don't know what the hell any of it is. But, they make these videos with their kids, and they basically have their houses set up like studios, and, they get rich off of it, and they become very successful. But I always felt like that's kind of exploiting your children, and it's almost like the modern equivalent of child stars, but even worse, because a lot of these kids, they don't even have privacy in their own homes. And I don't want to do that to my kids. So I'm really kind of torn about that. And that's why I've always asked them beforehand, you guys want to do this? And, like the other day, Jack had said he didn't really feel like being in the video. And I said, okay, that's cool. And then he changed his mind about it. But, and I'm not going to have it be a whole thing of following them around and, having them, it's not going to be just about them, because because that's what I feel like, excuse me, is a problem whenever they are, they sort of become the stars or whatever, and it's all about, I don't know, the like kids shows, and they're doing, anyway, some of that stuff. But, as long as it's us just doing our little thing, sitting in the chair at the desk and talking and messing around, I think that's probably not that bad. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll change my opinion on this. And, because the last thing I would ever want to do would be to, in any way, sort of, exploit them or take advantage of them, or, put them out there if that's not good for them. And, plus it's not like we're really getting famous off of this or anything. I mean, not that many people watch. But, the goal is for it to grow and to continue to grow. And that's part of sort of that organic evolution that I was hoping for is, I'm realizing that now it's more fun and it's more entertaining and people like it more and I enjoy it more and the kids love being involved. It's more fun when they're doing stuff with me. So, yeah, we're going to continue to roll with that for a while, and hopefully things will just continue to develop on their own, and we'll sort of see where this goes. But, no more football for a while. We've still got plenty to talk about with the off-season stuff, especially with the Titans having a new regime. We'll have the draft coming up soon. That's going to be another big topic with the combine and pro days coming up. We will also have basketball, college and NBA, and any of my other general interests that I may talk about, I guess. But I'm also open to, open to new topics. If anybody wants to throw one out there, you put it in the comments, or if, you want to just text it to me. And, yeah, we'll kind of continue to see where this goes. Anyway, I will hop off here now and go ahead and close out today's episode. I hope everyone had a wonderful football season. I hope you had a wonderful Monday. I want to thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you again soon. Love you. Bye.